Right, today I'm going to show you how I make the backgrounds for my artisan cards. I'm going to be using picked raspberry, distress oxide, bundle sage and tattered rose. To start with, we're going to need a piece of acetate, and I'm going to use my tattered rose ink. I'm going to smoosh ink onto my acetate, and then I'm going to spritz it with some water, and I'm going to apply it to my piece of card. Just going to touch it down lightly, allow it to puddle. I can pick these puddles up a bit and move them around onto other parts of the card just to create a background. And I'm going to wipe my acetate off just so that it doesn't contaminate anything else while we're working, and just wipe up around me. I'm going to dry this with my heat gun. And I'm going to encourage the water to run by picking it up, letting it run, using the heat gun to make it run, turn it round, let it run the other way, shake it if it doesn't move, and just get it generally making patterns. Don't worry if the card starts to buckle, there are ways of straightening it out, one of which is to dry from both sides. This is the chocolate baroque drawing cartridge, which I really love when I'm doing watery projects, because it goes back into shape quite easily. It can also be run through your die cutting machine to straighten it, or put a heavy weight on it. Right, having looked at what I've got there, I'm going to add a bit more of my background. I want a few more puddly effects here. So same thing again, ink onto the acetate. I always make sure I put the lids back on because I don't want them drying out. And then spritz it. I've not used quite so much water this time. Press it down, creating the puddles. That's a bit better. Just dry that off again. And now when it's dry, I'm going to be adding some stenciling and some peach background stamps. I want to make sure this is well dry before I do that, because I don't want the ink reacting with the water that's here. Right, I think that's dry now. As you can see, it's buckled. I'm just going to do that and straighten it out a bit better. It doesn't matter if it's not completely flat. Right, I'm now going to use my favourite stencil with the picked raspberry ink. I love this Spirelli stencil, and I'm just going to put, I don't stick it down, I'm just going to put it down in the corner and just go over the stencil with a little bit of picked raspberry, just to give us an impression. And normally when I'm using them on the corners, I do opposite corners, because that then pulls your eye towards the middle, where your main image is going to be on the card when it's finished. I prefer to use these blending brushes because I just get a better blend than when I use the foam pads. Just going to wipe my stencil off, and I'm then going to use the quarters stencil, which has these 4 different images on with my bundled sage. And because I've picked the circulate background that I'm going to use in a minute, I'm going to use the circles on this one. So just pick up a little bit of ink. I like to take this off the edge if I can. Just add a little bit of detail. And because our eyes work better in threes, I'm going to use 3 different bits. In fact, I'm not quite sure I like that, so I'm going to add a little bit more here, make it look like a longer piece through the middle. I'm then going to take some of my stamps, some of Pete's background stamps, and also I've picked a sentiment stamp from the fuchsia set because I want some text on this card, but I don't want this to be the main sentiment that's seen. So I'm going to use my picked raspberry again and lightly stamp this up. I'm going to stamp it in 3 different places because, as I said, our eyes work better if we see 3s. It's going to be partly hidden by whatever main image I end up deciding to put onto this card. So it's just another layer in the background to create interest. There we go. And it doesn't matter, because it's just a layer in the background, it doesn't matter that it doesn't stamp clearly. If it was going to be its main image, I probably wouldn't use a Distress Oxide, as they're not good for stamping sentiments. I'm then going to take Bundled Sage and Pete's speckled background stamp. I'm not putting it on a block because I don't want to use the whole stamp. I just want to use a little bit of it. I'm going to roll it across my ink using my fingers to push it into the ink. And then I'm just going to roll it in patches across the card. I'm going to use first and secondary stamping just to give different shades of it, because that adds that little bit more interest to the background. I think that's enough. Just going to clean the stamp off. I always keep this damp cloth next to me for doing that. I'm then going to take the I think I'm going to do Picked Raspberry again because the Tattered Rose is in the background. And I'm going to take the Circulate stamp. Again, I've not put it on a background. I'm going to choose this top end because I like the detail here. Just pat the stamp and rub it over lightly to just make sure there's enough ink on there. Don't want it too dark. And then I'm just going to press it into my project in the areas that I want it, using my fingers. Just a little more in the corner, and I think a little bit up here. And there is my background for an image. I would probably put one of Pete's floral images on here. The colours are quite nice colours for using with the fuchsia stamp that's Pete's. So I would probably put one of the double ones into the middle and then a sentiment here or up here. Thank you for watching.